Good morning, everyone. It is absolutely terrific to be back with you all this morning and see you here. I'm just delighted to be here. Before I begin, I want to say, as Linda already mentioned, I'm here this morning as a direct result of my participation in the Shared Pulpit workshop series. And I want to thank Bonnie for leading and facilitating that series. And I also want to thank my fellow participants, Barb, Linda, Deb, and Jean. For as much as I grumbled while participating in this series, another deadline, how many words this week, and all like that there, it was a terrific experience. And we gave each other feedback and encouragement. And so when Linda says she's thinking about or gauging the interest, I hope some of you will consider that it was well worth our time. My talk this morning is entitled, Who Am I Now? Some years ago, I participated in an extensive and intensive management workshop series. In a nutshell, its purpose was self-knowledge as a bridge to team building. One of the exercises I remember best required us to list, in order of importance, the 10 most valued roles we saw ourselves holding at that point in our lives. Among others, my list included daughter, sister, aunt, friend, and library director. We completed this exercise in silence and then put the list aside. In a later session, we were asked to retrieve those lists and then, going around the table, to discard one role at a time, starting with the least important. We had to announce each one as we discarded it. Anxiety and tension mounted as we proceeded, and well before the last roles were discarded, tears and anguish filled the room. The facilitator ended the session by asking, "Who are you now?" We left the room in silence. Life is a journey, and as we travel, the landscape changes. We blithely tell each other that change is, in fact, the only constant in our lives. We have all experienced change and been faced with some or many major life transitions: marriage, divorce, birth of a child, death of a loved one, new job, layoff, retirement, relocation, new home. Some of these transactions are planned and eagerly anticipated. We fear and mourn others. In either case, a major life change may cause us to pause and reevaluate who and what we are now. Personally, I have experienced most of the transitions I've listed, and after a period of acceptance and readjustment, found myself able to cope, adapt, and move forward on my journey. And then, unexpectedly, one day, I encountered a major detour. I retired 6 years ago. The first 3 years were easy. I had a small consulting contract that kept me loosely connected with the library, but primarily I did all the things I had looked forward to but hadn't had time for while I was working. I joined a gym, took yoga, did water aerobics, traveled, became a more active member of UUOCC, went into New York City once a month to see a play, tried a new recipe every week, watched movies and TV shows I had heard about but never seen, and caught up on some of the reading I always meant to do. When asked, I answered that life was good and retirement was great. I meant it. I had worked for most of my life, starting with summer jobs after I finished 9th grade. After college, I got married and fell into library work by landing a job at a college library. A couple of years later, we relocated, and my next job was in a medical library in New Brunswick. Since I found myself working in a library again, and Rutgers was nearby, I went back to school for my master's degree. When I finished, I was offered a position in a public library, and I never looked back. I loved it. By 1984, I was divorced and looking for a new career challenge. I accepted a position in Ocean County and moved south. For the next 25 years of my life, I knew exactly who I was and what my purpose was. I was director of a large public library in a growing county, and the possibilities were endless. I was part of a great team, and together we developed plans and goals and dreams. And we achieved most of what we set out to do. We built 12 libraries and undertook a major expansion and renovation of another. Beyond the bricks and mortar, we were equally audacious. In a conservative, mostly Republican county, we promoted diversity and inclusion. With community partners such as the NAACP and PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, we sponsored programs and events ranging from a community bus trip to Washington, D.C. to participate in the 40th anniversary celebration of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, and hosting Judy Shepard, mother of Matthew Shepard, to showing Freeheld about Laurel Hester, who, while dying, pleaded with the county and the freeholders to offer survivor benefits to domestic partners. And this last program was held a week before the freeholder election. To we Unitarians, these activities sound like business as usual. But they were anathema to the freeholders, and, I might add, to some vocal taxpayers. Despite any obstacles we encountered, I felt productive and knew our work was worthwhile. We also had fun, and the library received plaudits and awards. As fundraisers, we raffled Harley-Davidson motorcycles, dressed in leather for a calendar, and were featured in a story and photos on the front page of the New York Times. I brought a couple mementos. They're on the table over there if you want to have a quick look after the service. We were interviewed by Diane Sawyer on Good Morning America. The American Library Association and the Institute for Museum and Library Services gave us national recognition. I was invited to the White House and had my picture taken with First Lady Laura Bush. It was a heady time and much more than this introvert could ever have imagined. And then I retired. Retirement was my choice, and not only was I looking forward to it, but I believed I had prepared myself well for this new terrain. I had met with a financial advisor. Immediate post-retirement plans were in place, and I had had retirement counseling. As I noted earlier, my retirement began as anticipated. Then, over time, it appeared as though the roadmap was fraying and the road ahead was less distinct. There were uncharted hazards. Friends not only retired, but they relocated or began spending the better part of the year in sunnier climes. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The first floor of my house was flooded in the Sandy surge. Lily, my cat, the cat who had been with me for over 25 years, died. I blamed all of these for my worsening depression and anxiety, but they were not the root cause. My suffering was due to the loss of identity and purpose. In May of this year, David Brooks wrote an op-ed column in the Times entitled, "What is your purpose?" And he invited readers to send in responses to two questions. Have you found your purpose in life? And if so, how did you find it? A couple of months later, his column included a few of the responses he had received. He included this excerpt from Carolyn of Michigan. Yes, for 37 years I was a teacher, the last 25 as a high school special education teacher. That was my purpose. That was my calling. But now I am retired and I am adrift. What is my purpose now? I struggle with that every day. When I was teaching, I would bound out of bed at 6:15 every morning. Now I wake up early but stay under the covers, filled with a world's worth of anxiety. It might have been better had I died while trying to teach students with learning disabilities the basics of geometry. I feel for Carolyn, substitute librarian for teacher, and a year ago I could have written this passage. One Saturday last fall, I did what I should have done months before. I picked up the phone and made a call for help. I wish I could tell you exactly what prompted me to act. I believe I knew that despite years of tackling problems and finding solutions, I could not, this time, find my way back on my own. The well-traveled road had washed away, and the alternate route was unmarked. Pain and loss can accompany any one of life's transitions. Many are fortunate to find that friends, family, faith, or inner strength are sufficient to see them through the times of sorrow, reflection, and redirection. But if you, or someone you care for, is facing or experiencing a major life change, reach out. Ask for or offer help. Do this more than once. And when your road is blocked, do not be deterred, but seek an alternate path. I will close with a poem by Ruth Stone entitled Advice. My hazard wouldn't be yours, not ever. But every doom, like a hazelnut, comes down to its own worm. So I am rocking here like any granny with her apron over her head, saying, Lordy me, it's my trouble. There's nothing to be learned this way. If I heard a girl crying help, I would go to save her. But you hardly ever hear these words. Dear children, you must try to say something when you are in need. Don't confuse hunger with greed, and don't